Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, where we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey. And there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 462. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about overcoming the fear of solo walking and adventures. Now, this is a topic that I've kind of touched on before in episode 393, where I talk about staying safe in the outdoors. So I've been asked to speak or write or comment lately a couple of times on overcoming the fear of solo walking. And I feel like I always kind of skirt around the real topic here. So today I'm just going to go direct to the point and talk about what most women are afraid of when it comes to getting outdoors. So what I'm not going to talk about today, I'm not going to talk about basic outdoor safety because I covered this in episode 393. That's a good episode. You should check that out. I'm not going to talk about overcoming fear of animals. I'm not going to talk about staying safe in terms of preventing heat and cold injuries, other types of injuries, getting lost, navigation, none of that, because that's all stuff you can learn. Those are practical fears that you can very easily learn what you need to learn to have the knowledge and have the confidence to get outdoors and overcome those fears. What I'm going to talk about today is what most women are afraid of when we talk about being afraid of going out alone, hiking alone, running alone, walking alone, and that is the two-legged animal. Other human beings, usually men. So I feel like I always skirt around this topic because it feels like, of course, not all men, and I'm saying that with air quotes. Obviously, we know that, but the fear is there. And it's funny because when I've talked about this with outdoorsy men, sometimes a lot of times they're really surprised that women are afraid of men because they're not the kind of guys that are going to attack women. So they don't realize that women have this fear of getting attacked by men on the trail. But the fear is there and the fear is real. And I know that because I talk to women who are surprised that I spend so much time outdoors. I have taken other women on walks who I know do not go on their own because they're afraid. So let's talk about it. So I am not a fearless person. And I'm usually not the kind of person that can feel the fear and do it anyway. Like I've really had to work to overcome this. So I remember being a teenager and going hiking. I lived down the street from the Mount Diablo State Park, and it was great. I lived at the foot of this little mountain, and I used to go hiking sometimes. And sometimes I'd go on my own, and I was always super afraid. Like I was always checking my back, the slightest sound. I was looking behind. Like I don't even know why I did it. I was always really, really paranoid. And then when I moved to the UK, I was also quite fearful in the beginning. Like I'd walk and I'd hear a noise and I'd look behind me and I was like constantly checking my back. And if you're a fearful walker or hiker, you might know what I'm talking about. When I'd walk down a trail and I would see, I still do this today. Like if I see a lone man kind of like walking toward me on the trail, I'll wait a few seconds. And then once I feel like he should be sufficiently far behind me, I will turn around and I'll check the trail and make sure that he is like where he should be in terms of walking away from me on the trail. So I do still have some fear. I have seen a couple sketchy guys on the trail, but nothing's ever happened. And I don't know if that's my own paranoia that like builds up the fear or whether they are weird. I remember, I think it was the year before, when I was doing the Way South Path and I was getting ready to update my book on that. I was doing the walk in one day and I was in this little woodland and this guy came up behind me with his dog and for some reason, I don't know, I just didn't want him behind me. So I stopped and pretended to tie my shoelace so I could get him in front of me. And so he was with his dog. He was just a dog walker. So he went in front of me and he walked on. So I started walking more slowly just to let him get in front of me and further and further. And then the trail kind of zigzagged up. And then it went through this hedge and through this farm. And so I was going straight and I checked to see where he was and he had gone left. But he had also stopped and was kind of looking back. And I felt like he was looking to see which way I was going. And again, this could have been my own paranoia. I don't know. Everything was fine. Nothing happened. But I just didn't like the way he had stopped and was like looking back towards the trail to see where I was going, or maybe just looking at a bird. I don't know. But I just got a weird vibe. Again, nothing happened. It was fine. And that's really the most notable time that something like that has happened. Like most of the time, I feel fine. You know, I do get out for running, hiking, walking, no problems. I go camping alone. The only thing that I have been fearful of that has kept me from doing it on my own is wild camping. And I went wild camping a couple times on this coast-to-coast walk accompanied by 2 men. And so that was really safe. And I feel like now that I've experienced wild camping in a very remote place, I feel like I would be more likely to try it on my own. Of course, down here in the South, it's not permitted. Wild camping isn't permitted. So don't really have any easy places to try it out that I feel like are sufficiently remote. But I've been watching this YouTube channel where this guy does stealth camping in not really remote places. I don't know if I'm up for that, but I feel like I'm getting to the point where I'm going to try wild camping on my own. And I feel like that's kind of the next outdoors fear for me to overcome. Stay tuned. Maybe I'll do it soon. I've been talking about this for a long time, so long, in fact, that a friend of mine who had listened to this podcast where I mentioned wanting to go wild camping on my own asked me if I'd done it, and I still haven't. So here we are. But I think that that's definitely my next and kind of final, for now, outdoors fear to overcome. So that's where I am with my own fears. I am not fearless, but I get out there. The only thing that my fears have been preventing me from doing is wild camping. So pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I want to get out wild camping on my own. That will be fun. But for now, it's not preventing me from doing most of the things that I want to do. So how can you overcome your fear and anxiety around solo walking and adventures? I think this is more than just a case of feel the fear and do it anyway. Just get out there and do it. But that is part of it. So part of what has gotten me to this point is that I just got out there and did it. You know, I went out there, I went out for solo walks, went out for solo hikes, did the long distance trails. And the more I do it, the better I feel, the safer I feel, the more confidence I have. So I think my advice would be to start small, start easy, and then expand from there. So start with like a short local hike or walk around your house, or a trail that you're familiar with, or a trail that you've done with other people, or somewhere that you feel safer for whatever reason, whether it's because it's closer to home, or the terrain is easy, or you feel whatever feels small and easy to you. And then expand from there. So getting out there and just doing it is a part of it. However, I think there are things that you can do and things that you can learn that will also help not only give you the confidence to get out there alone, but also give you the skills you need to manage the situation if something does happen. So self-defense. So I took my first self-defense class back in 1992. I'm going to share a picture of this in the show notes. I did this really cool self-defense course for women called Model Mugging. And this started in the States. I did this course in California. They now have them all over the world. Sadly, they don't have any courses in the UK. I think the nearest place that you can do these courses is Germany. But I do think they have courses in English in Europe. But anyway, so this is that course where you may have seen pictures, and I will put a picture in the show notes, where the guy is dressed up in this big suit, protective suit, and you are defending yourself with full force blows. And this is designed around the kind of self-defense that women need. So someone comes up from behind you, grabs your hair, shoves you in the ground. There's a lot of ground fighting because that's where a lot of women are going to be fighting from. If someone is trying to rape you, they're probably not going to try to do it standing up. So you need to learn how to fight on the ground, and especially with your legs. Like women are quite strong with our legs. So in model mugging, we learned a lot of blows and like ways to strike with your legs. So that was a really great course. And like I said, that I did 1992. It was the end of my freshman year of university. And I felt a lot more confident after taking that. I used to be really, really, really paranoid about personal safety. And so that gave me a lot of confidence. As time went on, I really wanted to do some kind of martial art. Never did it. Finally, 7 years ago, I decided I was going to do it that year. I think this was 2015. And I signed up for kickboxing. As you know, because I talk about it all the time on the show, I'm a brown black belt, hoping to do my black belt grading this year or the next. And I've come a long way. Kickboxing has given me so much confidence, just completely transformed how I feel in terms of self-defense. One thing I really like about the classes that I do is that they're mixed, so it's men and women. And the fact that I can get on a mat and spar with a man has given me a ton of confidence. So my advice would be, don't just get out there and do it and force yourself to overcome the fear, but also prepare. Be safe. Like, know how to defend yourself physically. I think this is a skill that every woman should have. Girl, woman, teenager, any female of any age, like this is super important. And I think if you haven't done any kind of self-defense course, maybe now's a good time to do it. Probably nothing will ever happen to you. But if it does, you know how to defend yourself. I really just cannot begin to describe how it's changed my life and how it's given me confidence. And I'm sure that part of the reason I've been able to get out there and do all of the solo hiking and walking that I do and running is because I feel confident that I know how to fight. If someone does attack me on the trail, I know what to do. Partly because of model mugging, partly because of kickboxing. So self-defense, do it. So how to be safe when you're alone? Some things should go without saying, but I feel like I should say it anyway. Always have your phone with you. In case something happens, you need to be able to call for help. Avoid dangerous areas. So I think there are places where we know in our gut that aren't really safe, but sometimes we go there anyway. So going back to university, there were certain places that I didn't feel safe walking, but I did it anyway because they were shortcuts. So I remember there's this really convenient shortcut that went behind the health center of the university. And it was really dark back there, and it was a nice sidewalk, very well, but it was dark. There wasn't enough lighting. And I was always kind of a bit wary, but it really cut a few minutes off my walk. And so I would do it sometimes, and I'd always be really paranoid. And then this one year, the university did this thing called Take Back the Night. I don't know if universities still do this, but it was like a women's protest thing to say that women should be able to feel safe walking around alone at night. And so every year there would be this kind of protest where women would go and walk around to different places on campus where assaults had happened, and they would talk about it, and they would talk about how to stay safe. But this one year, someone that was involved in that program painted red handprints all around the campus where women had been assaulted, and multiple handprints where there had been multiple assaults. Well, that year, about 5 red handprints showed up behind the health center. So it was the place where I was always afraid to walk, but always thought, oh, nothing will happen. Well, at least 5 assaults had happened there. So that was a really interesting moment for me because it was such a confirmation of the fact that like my gut was telling me not to go there after dark, but I was doing it anyway. At daytime, it was perfectly fine. There were plenty of people there, but at night it felt wrong. And it felt wrong for a reason. Stuff had happened there. So avoid dangerous areas or areas where your gut is just saying no. If your gut's saying no for some reason, just pay attention to it and go somewhere else. I remember there's also this shortcut that I used to do across this little creek to go to campus. I mean, anything could have happened there, but it was off campus, so there were no handprints. But that was another place where sometimes in the evening, be coming back from class, and I'd be like, oh, I probably shouldn't cross the creek there. So I wouldn't, but it was really convenient. So again, listen to your gut and avoid the areas that your gut is telling you to stay away from. At the same time, stay alert. Be aware of what's going on around you. Don't get too lost in your thoughts, and certainly don't get lost in music or podcasts. I do not ever listen to in-ear podcasts or music with in-ear headphones ever. I used to listen to just one headphone and leave the other one out. Now, if I'm going to listen to podcasts or music on the trail, I use bone conducting headphones. So bone conducting headphones, and I will link to them in the show notes, are headphones that sit on your jawbone and they conduct the sound into your ears through your skull. So that leaves your actual ears open to listen to stuff on the trail. So I find those to be useful. They make me feel safer. And I feel like that's just part of staying alert and being aware of what's around me on the trail. Because if you don't know who's around you or what's around you on the trail, anything could happen. Next, walk purposefully and confidently. So if you see someone or something that makes you nervous, be aware of how you're walking. Stand up straight, walk purposefully, walk confidently. Maybe think of a song that gives you confidence. Think of a song that gives you rhythm. I don't know, something that helps you to walk purposefully. That's going to make a big difference because if you look alert and confident, you're going to be less likely to be chosen as a victim. If you're not paying attention to anything and you look kind of scared, yeah, that's a different story. Tell someone where you're going. This is practical. Always tell someone where you're going, what direction you're going in. A lot of times when I go for a run, I don't know exactly which route I'm taking, but I will always tell my husband, oh, I'm going that way or that way. And he kind of knows where I run because we run together. So if I tell him which direction I'm going, more or less, he knows where I'm going. Another thing that I've done, especially when I walk a national trail, like a linear route, I will take pictures of the signs and text them to him. So you can text a partner or a friend or someone signs of where you are on the route so that they know where you are. So on a national trail, I'm walking from point to point, and there are many signs along the way of nearest village or other trail or whatever. And I always take pictures of those and text them to him so he knows where I'm going. So he can kind of follow me on the trail, but also if something were to happen, that was the last known point where I was. And there's also obviously a timestamp in the text. So if something were to happen, like you got injured or something worse, they would know that you were at that point at a certain time. Next, be vague on social media. So I don't share on social media exactly where I am. I don't share, if I'm doing a national trail like the Ridgeway or the South Downs Way, I don't share the photos on the same day. I either delay or I mix them up, or I'm just not clear about where I'm staying every night. I don't share where I actually am, and I will mix up the posts sometimes. So just because I don't want people to know where I am, except for the people that I do want to know where I am. So those are some things that you can do to be safe when you're alone. Now, if you see a sketchy person or someone that makes you uncomfortable, listen to your gut. This is the most important thing I can say. Trust yourself. Always trust yourself. There's a reason that your gut is telling you that something is wrong. And if you haven't read the book, The Gift of Fear, I highly recommend it. So it's this book that was written by this, I don't know exactly what his role is. He's like a celebrity stalker helper. He helps celebrities and people that have stalkers, and he helps them to stay safe. But basically the whole book is about listening to your gut, because when your gut is telling you something's wrong, that's because some part of your system saw something that was a red flag. But maybe your conscious brain didn't recognize it or isn't aware of it, but your subconscious is, because it knows that something is wrong. So whether it's something in that person's behavior or something that you saw out of the corner of your eye or something, listen to your gut. And I will link in the show notes to that book, The Gift of Fear, because it's really, really good. Again, act confident, walk purposefully, make eye contact. When I see someone like a lone man walking, whether they look normal, and I'm doing that with air quotes, or whether they look a bit concerning, make eye contact and greet them. Hi, you don't need to get into a big conversation, but just, good afternoon, say hello, make eye contact. And that's also kind of how I gauge the other person as well, because sometimes I've crossed paths with men who don't meet my eye and they don't say anything to me, and we've passed right by each other, but it's like I'm not even there. And so that's kind of a red flag to me, and that's something that I notice, because I think most people greet other people when you're alone on a trail. So that's something that would make me take notice. Another thing, if you are engaging with this person and they're escalating the situation or giving you reason to be afraid, is to calm your fear. This is something that I learned in the early days of kickboxing. I was a red belt, and I was on the mat with this woman who was a yellow belt, but she hadn't been to class in a long time. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. I didn't know she was, a level more advanced than me, but we didn't know each other. Like, we didn't know our fighting styles, and I was really new to it. And so I was still very fearful of other people when I'd get on the mat and spar with people. And this was the first time that I felt someone being scared of me. And that was something really new. I'd never felt that before because I was new. Other people knew I was not a scary person. But she was scared of me. And it really threw me off at first. But I could feel her fear and I could feel her nervousness. That we fought. I don't remember who won, but we went on with, the class. But it really stuck in me how I could feel her fear. So if I could feel her fear, I realized other people could feel my fear. So I learned that when I got on a mat with someone and I was afraid of them, the second I felt that fear, and that's kind of hard when you're like on a mat getting ready to fight with someone, but I learned how to do it. And the more that I practiced, the easier it was. And now to this day, whenever I get on a mat with someone and the bell's about to go off and I feel that like tightening stomach fear, I just calm down and I just tell myself to calm the fear. So if you're in a situation where you are afraid of someone, remember this. Calm your fear, because predatory people are going to feed off that fear. They're going to feel it, and that's going to pique their interest. So remember to calm your fear. You can do it. It's like an energetic thing. Just feel yourself calming the fear. And again, that's not about ignoring your gut instinct. You are recognizing that your gut is telling you this is a bad situation, potentially, but you're calming the fear so as to present as a calm and confident person to this other person that you're afraid of. So it's just about masking that fear for them, while at the same time recognizing this might not be a good situation. If the person engages in conversation with you, don't ever admit that you're alone. Tell them that your friend or your partner is either behind you or in front of you. Obviously, your fictional friend should be in the direction the person is walking towards, not where they've come from. Otherwise, they'll know no one is ahead. But don't admit that you're alone. And also don't be polite. And I think this is an area that a lot of women get into trouble with. If someone is being aggressive, do not feel the need to be polite. I remember reading this story online about this woman who had this guy that was following her on a trail, and she kept trying to get away from him, and he was like, "Oh, can I just have a hug?" And she was like, "No." And he kept trying to move in for a hug. Don't be polite. Don't give in to the hug. That is just totally inappropriate. You know it's inappropriate. Who gives random people hugs on a trail? No. Don't be polite and give in to whatever it is that they're asking for, because this is a technique that predators will sometimes use to test your boundaries. And it's how they break through your boundaries and break past your boundaries with something innocent like a hug. But once they've done that, they realize it's easier for them to get you to bend to their will. So don't be polite. If someone is being aggressive, if someone is being inappropriate, do not feel the need to be polite. Do not give them a hug. Do not give them a kiss. Do not do things you don't want to do. Just say no, and say no very clearly, and get the hell away from them. When it comes to wild camping, remote is safety. Stay away from roads, stay away from exit routes. The more remote you are, the safer you will be. And I think that's part of the reason why I haven't attempted wild camping, because I don't live in very remote areas. But I really do look forward to getting back up into Lake District and places where I can go wild camping in very remote areas. Because, well, not the second place, but one of the places that we wild camped, it was very remote, and I honestly would have felt very safe there on my own. So yeah, I think that might be where I need to go for a weekend or a long weekend or something to experiment. So we'll see. So what are the benefits of going on solo adventures? Why should you even bother getting past this fear and doing things on your own when you could do it with other people? I find it really empowering to go on solo adventures, whether it's solo walking, hiking, running, whatever. when I get back, I feel really good about myself. I feel really empowered. It boosts my self-confidence. It boosts my self-esteem. I feel good about myself. I've had an adventure. I've done it on my own. I have relied on myself. It was fine. It was great. It gives me a boost. It's also a step outside of our comfort zone, which has a ripple effect on other parts of your life. So every time I step out of my comfort zone and have some kind of adventure, it makes it easier for me to step outside of my comfort zone in other areas of my life. Like other things that were previously difficult or scary get easier. And that's a good thing. It's also easier for us to reconnect with ourselves on a solo adventure. Now, when I do my national trails, when I do a long distance walk, it's a very introspective experience. Like I'm very much kind of like connected with myself and spending time with myself. I don't know. It's very, like I've just gotten used to that. That's the norm. And I realized when I did this coast to coast walk with other people that there wasn't as much of that. It was very different. It was very much about sharing the experience with the other people, which is fantastic, but it's a different type of experience. So if you're used to doing adventures with other people, you might find it really useful to go on a solo adventure to reconnect with yourself and to just be with yourself and get to know yourself. And this is something that I talk about a lot, is knowing yourself, because I think that the better we know ourselves, the easier it is for us to make the right decisions for ourselves and create the life we want to live. So, yes, hope you found this useful. I was a bit concerned about talking about this topic because, I don't know, it just feels delicate for some reason. So, yeah. So here we are, talking about the thing that I've been kind of skirting around the issue, but here we are. So if you want to learn how to stay safe in the outdoors in other ways, in terms of like navigation, health, safety, that kind of thing, I have a podcast episode, which I mentioned at the start, which is Staying Safe in the Outdoors, 393. And I also have a blog post, Solo Hiking for Women, Staying Safe in the Outdoors, where I talk a little bit about the stuff I've done today, but I didn't go as in-depth into it. So, I hope you found this episode interesting and useful, and I hope that it inspires you to get outdoors alone. Give it a try. Obviously, if you live in an area where it is safe for you to get outdoors, I really understand that not all countries are as safe as where I live. And there are some countries that I've lived in where I would not go hiking alone. So use common sense. If you know that your country or the part of the world that you live in isn't safe, don't do it. But you might live in a place that's super safe and you've just been afraid to go out. So yeah, I hope you found this useful. If you enjoyed this episode, you might want to check out these related shows. 438, I talk with Jenny Mowbray about solo travel and adventure when you're in a relationship. 414, I talk with Rebecca Walsh about solo hiking for women. 383, I talk with Anne Malambo about how solo travel can change our lives. And 367, I talk about finding yourself through solo travel and outdoor adventures. So that is all for now. Hope you enjoyed it and have a great week. Happy trails to you. And remember to visit hollyworton.com/462 for the show notes on this episode. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.